The Phoenix Children's Hospital room was quiet, except for the steady beep of medical machines monitoring 8-year-old Zayden Mitchell's vital signs. Sunlight streamed through the window, casting shadows across the sterile white walls covered with get-well cards that had stopped coming weeks ago. Zayden lay motionless in her hospital bed, staring at the ceiling tiles she had memorized during her 3-month stay. Her mother, Tempe Mitchell, sat in the uncomfortable chair beside the bed, scrolling through her phone to distract herself from the silence. As a nurse herself, she understood the gravity of her daughter's condition better than most parents. The latest round of chemotherapy had been brutal, and Zayden hadn't spoken in 2 days. Nurse Paisley Chen entered the room for the afternoon medication check, her usual bright smile faltering when she saw Zayden's vacant expression. "Hey there, warrior princess," she said softly, approaching the bed with practiced gentleness. "How are we feeling today?" Zayden didn't respond. She didn't even turn her head. Tempe looked up from her phone, worry etched across her tired face. "She's been like this since yesterday evening. Won't eat, won't talk, won't watch TV. I don't know what to do anymore." Paisley checked Zayden's chart and adjusted her IV drip, her heart breaking as she watched the little girl who had once been so full of life and basketball dreams. Just 6 months ago, Zayden had been the star player on her elementary school team, full of energy and hope. Now she looked like a ghost, her former self. "Zayden, honey, your mom told me you used to love drawing," Paisley said, pulling up a chair next to the bed. "Would you like me to bring you some colored pencils?" Still no response. Tempe sighed deeply and stepped into the hallway with Paisley. "I found something under her pillow this morning," she whispered, pulling out a crumpled of paper. "I don't know what to do." Paisley unfolded the paper and read the words written in Zayden's childish handwriting. "Mommy, I want to go to heaven. Here hurts too much. I'm tired of fighting. Please don't be sad." The note hit Paisley like a physical blow. She had been working in pediatric oncology for 8 years, but seeing a child give up hope never got easier. "Has Dr. Sterling seen this?" Paisley asked quietly. "Not yet. I just found it an hour ago." Back in the room, Zayden had closed her eyes, but Paisley could tell she wasn't sleeping. The machines continued their steady rhythm, monitoring a life that seemed to be slowly slipping away, not from cancer, but from complete despair. Paisley made a decision that would change everything. That evening, she pulled out her phone and recorded a short video in Zayden's empty room, speaking directly to the camera with tears in her eyes. "This is Zayden Mitchell. She's 8 years old, and she's been fighting leukemia for 6 months. She used to be the best basketball player in her school. She used to light up every room she entered. Now she's given up hope." Paisley paused, gathering her courage for what she was about to do. "Someone out there needs to remind this little warrior that she's not fighting alone." She posted the video to TikTok with the caption, "Help me show Zayden that miracles still happen. Zayden strong. Chart never give up." Within hours, the video began to spread. 6 months earlier, life had been completely different for the Mitchell family. Zayden was the undisputed star of Roosevelt Elementary's basketball team, a 8-year-old with skills that amazed coaches and parents alike. Her crossover dribble was legendary among third graders, and her determination on the court reminded everyone of the professional players she idolized. "That's my baby girl out there," Tempe would tell other parents from the bleachers, her voice filled with pride as she watched Zayden weave through defenders twice her size. Working double shifts as a nurse at Mercy General Hospital made it hard to attend every game, but Tempe never missed the important one. Zayden's best friend, Braylon Washington, sat in the front row of every game, cheering louder than anyone else. "She's gonna be in the WNBA someday," he would tell anyone who would listen. "Maybe even better than Diana Taurasi." The two had been inseparable since kindergarten, bonding over their shared love of basketball and dreams of playing professionally. The gym at Roosevelt Elementary was packed on the night that changed everything. It was the championship game of their youth league, and Zayden had been feeling tired all week. Tempe had noticed her daughter's unusual fatigue, but attributed it to the intense practice schedule and the excitement of the playoffs. "You got this, Zay!" Braylon shouted as Zayden brought the ball down court in the fourth quarter. The score was tied, and everyone knew the ball would end up in her hand for the final shot. Zayden felt dizzy. She crossed half court, but she pushed through it. This was her moment, the shot she had practiced thousands of times in her driveway. The crowd was on its feet, The opposing team's defense was focused entirely on her, and everything seemed to slow down as she approached the three-point line. Then, the world went black. Zayden collapsed to the hardwood floor, her body going limp as concerned voices erupted throughout the gymnasium. Tempe leapt from the bleachers, her nursing instincts kicking in as she rushed to her daughter's side. Braylon watched in horror as his best friend was carried off the court on a stretcher. The championship game, suddenly the least important thing in the world. The emergency room at Phoenix Children's Hospital became a second home over the next week, as doctors ran test after test. Tempe used her medical knowledge to ask the right question, but deep down, she dreaded the answer. Zayden's symptoms, the fatigue, the pale complexion, the occasional nosebleeds she had dismissed as minor injuries, suddenly formed a pattern that no parent wants to recognize. Dr. Maddox Sterling, a pediatric oncologist with kind eyes and 2 decades of experience delivering difficult news, called Tempe into his office on a Tuesday morning that would forever divide their lives into before and after. "Mrs. Mitchell, I need to talk to you about Zayden's test results," he said gently, gesturing for her to sit down. "The blood work and bone marrow biopsy confirm what we suspected. Zayden has acute lymphoblastic leukemia." The words hit Tempe like a freight train. Even with her medical background, hearing those words about her own child made the world tilt on its axis. "How bad is it?" she managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's aggressive, but it's also the most common form of childhood leukemia, which means we have established treatment protocols with good success rate," Dr. Sterling explained. "With immediate treatment, the 5-year survival rate is over 90%. She's young, she's strong, and we caught it relatively early." Tempe nodded, trying to process the information professionally, while her heart shattered emotionally. "What does treatment look like?" 3 phases over approximately 2.5 years, Dr. Sterling said, pulling out a detailed treatment plan. Induction therapy to achieve remission, consolidation therapy to eliminate remaining cancer cells, and maintenance therapy to prevent relapse. The first phase is the most intensive. She'll be in the hospital for at least a month, possibly longer. When Tempe broke the news to Zayden, she tried to stay strong and positive. "Baby, you're going to have to fight a different kind of battle now," she said, holding her daughter's hand. "But you're the toughest kid I know, and we're going to beat this together." Zayden's first question wasn't about treatment or prognosis. "Will I be able to play basketball again?" "Absolutely," Tempe said without hesitation, though Dr. Sterling had been more cautious in his assessment. "You're going to come back stronger than ever." The first round of chemotherapy began immediately. Zayden's beautiful thick hair started falling out within 2 weeks, coming out in clumps every time she touched her head. Tempe helped her shave it all off one evening, both of them crying as years of careful braiding and styling disappeared down the bathroom drain. "I look like a boy," Zayden said, staring at her reflection in the mirror. "You look like a warrior," Tempe replied firmly. "This is your armor for battle." Braylon visited every day during those first weeks, bringing homework assignments and updates from school. He didn't seem bothered by Zayden's appearance changes, chattering about basketball games and playground drama, as if nothing had changed. His visits were the highlight of Zayden's days, the one constant connection to her normal life. The initial treatment showed promising results. After 4 weeks of intensive chemotherapy, Zayden's blood counts improved dramatically. Dr. Sterling was cautiously optimistic about her response to treatment, and for the first time since the diagnosis, Tempe allowed herself to hope that the nightmare might be ending. "Can I go back to school?" Zayden asked during a follow-up appointment where Dr. Sterling delivered the good news about her improved lab result. "I think we can arrange that," he said with a smile. "Your immune system is still compromised, so you'll need to be careful about crowds and illness. But returning to normal activities is actually beneficial for recovery." Zayden's return to Roosevelt Elementary was emotional for everyone involved. Her classmates had made welcome-back posters, and her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, had prepared the class for Zayden's changed appearance. She wore a colorful head wrap that Tempe had bought, trying to feel confident about her new look. "You look so cool," Braylon said immediately when he saw her. "Like a superhero or something." For 6 weeks, life felt almost normal again. Zayden attended classes, played gentle games at recess, and even shot baskets in the gym during lunch break. She couldn't participate in competitive sports yet, but just being around basketball again filled her with hope for the future. The illusion of normalcy shattered on a Thursday morning in November when Zayden woke up with a fever and severe fatigue. Tempe rushed her to the hospital, praying it was just a common infection. But the blood work told a different story, one that would push their family into the darkest period of their journey. "The cancer has returned," Dr. Sterling said quietly during an emergency consultation. "This time it's more aggressive than before. We need to start a more intensive treatment protocol immediately." The relapse hit harder than the original diagnosis. This time, there were no promises about quick recovery or returning to normal life. This time, Dr. Sterling's expression was grave as he outlined a treatment plan that would require months of hospitalization and carry significant risk. As Zayden was readmitted to the pediatric oncology ward, she looked back at the school she was leaving behind and whispered, "I just want to play basketball again." None of them knew it would be 3 months before she would even want to get out of bed. The second hospitalization felt completely different from the first. Where there had once been hope and determination, now there was resignation and fear. Zayden's room on the 7th floor became a prison where each day blended into the next, marked only by the rotation of nurses and the scheduled arrival of medications that made her feel worse before they made her feel better. Braylon's visits became less frequent. At first, Tempe understood. School had started again, and 8-year-old children weren't naturally equipped to handle the reality of serious illness. But as days turned into weeks, and Braylon's excuses for not visiting became more elaborate, Zayden began to realize that she was losing more than her health. "He's probably just busy with basketball season starting," Tempe said gently, when Zayden asked why her best friend hadn't come to see her a week. "You know how much he loves playing." But Zayden wasn't naive. She had seen the way some of her other classmates looked at her during her brief return to school, a mixture of pity, fear, and uncomfortable awkwardness. She was no longer Zayden the basketball star, she was Zayden the sick kid, and that distinction changed everything about how people related to her. Nurse Paisley Chen became Zayden's most consistent companion during those long hospital days. A recent nursing school graduate with an infectious optimism, Paisley had specifically requested assignment to the pediatric oncology ward because she believed children deserved the most compassionate care during their greatest battle. "So, what's your favorite basketball team?" Paisley asked one afternoon while checking Zayden's IV line. She had learned that engaging patients in conversation about their interests often provided better pain management than medication alone. "The Phoenix Mercury," Zayden replied listlessly, not looking away from the muted television mounted on the wall. "But I don't really watch anymore." "Why not? I heard you were amazing at basketball before you got sick." Zayden shrugged, a gesture that had become her standard response to most questions. The truth was that watching basketball now felt like torture, a reminder of everything she had lost and might never get back. Every player she saw running up and down the court represented a future that seemed increasingly impossible. The isolation became more complete as autumn progressed into winter. Her elementary school classmates were busy with holiday preparation, birthday party, and weekend activities that Zayden could only observe through social media posts that Tempe reluctantly showed her. Each photo of her former teammates celebrating victories or her classmates at sleepovers felt like evidence that life was moving forward without her. "Mrs. Patterson called today," Tempe mentioned one evening, referring to Zayden's teacher. "She wanted to know if you'd like the class to record video messages for you." "No," Zayden said immediately. "I don't want their pity." The change in her daughter's attitude broke Tempe's heart. The spirited, confident child who had once dominated basketball courts with her fearless play had been replaced by someone who seemed to be withdrawing from the world entirely. Even worse, Tempe could see that Zayden was beginning to withdraw from her as well. Dr. Sterling noticed the psychological changes during their weekly consultations. "Depression is common among pediatric cancer patients, especially during extended hospitalization," he explained to Tempe during one of their private discussions. "The social isolation can be just as damaging as the physical effects of treatment." "What can we do about it?" Tempe asked desperately. "She barely talks to me anymore. She doesn't want to watch TV, doesn't want to read, doesn't want visitors. She just stares at the ceiling for hours. I'd like to have our child psychologist, Dr. Amanda Foster, spend some time with Zayden," Dr. Sterling suggested. "Sometimes talking to someone outside the immediate medical team can help patients process their feelings more effectively. But when Dr. Foster attempted to engage Zayden in conversation, she met with the same wall of silence that had frustrated everyone else. Zayden answered questions with single words or shrugs, showing no interest in the coping strategies or positive thinking exercises that typically helped young patients maintain hope. The breaking point came on a particularly difficult night in December. Zayden had endured a brutal day of chemotherapy that left her nauseated and weak. Tempe had stepped out to get coffee and speak with Dr. Sterling about adjusting her daughter's anti-nausea medication. When she returned to the room, she found Zayden sitting up in bed, writing something on a piece of paper with shaky hand. "What are you working on, baby?" Tempe asked gently. Zayden quickly shoved the paper under her pillow. "Nothing, just drawing." But something about her daughter's body language seemed off. That night, after Zayden had finally fallen asleep from exhaustion, Tempe couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. She carefully reached under Zayden's pillow and found the folded piece of paper. The words written in her daughter's careful third-grade handwriting made Tempe's knees buckle. "Mommy, I want to go to heaven. Here hurts too much. I'm tired of fighting. Please don't be sad. Love, Zayden." Tempe sank into the chair beside Zayden's bed, the note trembling in her hands as she read it again and again. Her medical training told her this was a cry for help, a sign of severe depression that required immediate intervention. But her heart as a mother was simply broken by the realization that her little girl had reached such a point of despair. She sat in that chair all night, watching Zayden sleep and trying to figure out how to save her daughter from drowning in hopelessness. The cancer treatments were working, Zayden's latest blood work showed improvement, and Dr. Sterling remained cautiously optimistic about her physical prognosis. But what good would beating cancer do if Zayden lost her will to live? The next morning, Tempe showed the note to Dr. Sterling, who immediately called for a psychiatric consultation. Dr. Foster returned with a more intensive approach, but Zayden remained largely unresponsive to traditional therapeutic interventions. "She needs something to fight for," Dr. Foster explained to Tempe after another unsuccessful session. "Right now, she sees only loss. Loss of her normal childhood, loss of her friendships, loss of her athletic dreams. We need to help her find something to hope for again." Nurse Paisley had been watching Zayden's decline with growing concern. As someone only a few years out of nursing school, she wasn't bound by the same professional protocols that limited how emotionally invested she could become in her patients' lives. Zayden's case had affected her deeply, and she found herself thinking about the little girl even when she wasn't at work. One evening, as she was finishing her shift and checking on Zayden one last time, Paisley made a decision that would change everything. She pulled out her phone and, standing in the empty hospital corridor outside Zayden's room, recorded a video that came straight from her heart. "This is Zayden Mitchell," she said quietly to the camera. "She's 8 years old, and she's been fighting leukemia for 6 months. She used to be the best basketball player in her school. She used to light up every room she entered. Now, she's given up hope." Paisley paused, looking back at the room where Zayden lay staring at the ceiling, and continued with tears in her eyes. "Someone out there needs to remind this little warrior that she's not fighting alone." She posted the video to TikTok at 11:47 p.m., adding the caption, "Help me show Zayden that miracles still happen. Zayden strong, never give up." Then she went home and prayed that someone, somewhere, would see it and care enough to help. The video started slowly, gathering a few dozen views its first hour online. Paisley checked her phone obsessively, watching the numbers climb gradually as night turned to morning. She had posted similar content before, updates about her work in pediatric oncology, inspirational stories about young patients fighting cancer, but nothing had ever gained significant traction. By morning, the video had reached a few hundred views. Compassionate comments began appearing from other healthcare workers, parents of children with cancer, and strangers touched by Zayden's story. Paisley felt encouraged, but knew that sympathy from a small audience wouldn't be enough to break through Zayden's depression. Then, something unexpected happened. A popular basketball content creator with over 100,000 followers shared Paisley's video to his own account, adding the comment, "This little warrior needs to know that the basketball community has her back. Let's show her some love." The reshare changed everything. Within hours, the video was spreading across multiple platforms as basketball fans, cancer survivors, and parents rallied around Zayden's story. The hashtag #ZaydenStrong began trending in Phoenix, then across Arizona, then nationwide. Paisley arrived at work the next morning to find her phone flooded with notifications. The video had reached over 50,000 views overnight, and the comments section was filled with messages of support from around the world. More importantly, people were asking how they could help, what Zayden's favorite team was, and whether she had any specific wishes or needs. "Have you seen this?" Dr. Sterling asked Paisley during the morning briefing, showing her his own phone where the video was playing. "This is remarkable. I've never seen anything like this kind of response to a patient's story." Tempe was initially worried about her daughter's privacy being shared online, but when Paisley showed her the overwhelming outpouring of support, she began to see the potential for something positive to emerge from their darkest moment. "Maybe if Zayden sees how many people are cheering for her, it might help," she said hopefully. But when they tried to show Zayden the video and the thousands of supportive comments, she barely reacted. "I don't know these people," she said quietly. "They don't really care about me. They just feel sorry for me." The viral attention continued to grow throughout the day. Local news stations picked up the story, and Phoenix Mercury players began sharing the video on their social media account. By evening, #ZaydenStrong was trending nationally, and the original video had reached over 200,000 views. That's when Kevin Durant saw it. The Phoenix Suns superstar was scrolling through his social media before a game against the Lakers when Zayden's story appeared on his timeline. The video of Paisley talking about the 8-year-old basketball player who had lost hope struck him immediately. Durant had always been particularly moved by stories involving young athletes facing adversity, remembering his own childhood challenges and the adults who had believed in him when few others did. Without consulting his management team, publicist, or the Suns media department, Durant made a decision that was pure instinct. He sent a direct message to Paisley through TikTok. "Is this little girl still at Phoenix Children's Hospital? I'd like to visit her if that's possible." Paisley stared at her phone in disbelief. Kevin Durant, the Kevin Durant, wanted to visit Zayden. She immediately called Dr. Sterling, who was equally shocked, but quickly began coordinating what would need to happen for such a visit to occur safely and appropriately. "We can't tell Zayden in advance," Tempe decided when Dr. Sterling explained the situation. "She'll either not believe it or build it up so much if something goes wrong, she'll be even more devastated." The next morning, Durant arrived at Phoenix Children's Hospital with minimal fanfare. He had specifically requested no media presence, no photographers, and no publicity. This wasn't about generating positive press or fulfilling a community service obligation. This was about one human being reaching out to help another in their time of greatest need. Zayden was having a particularly difficult day. The previous night's chemotherapy had left her weak and nauseated, and she had barely spoken to anyone since waking up. She was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling with the same vacant expression that had become her default, when Paisley knocked on her door. "Zayden, honey, you have a visitor," Paisley said gently, her voice barely containing her excitement. "I don't want to see anyone," Zayden replied without looking toward the door. "I think you might want to see this person," Paisley insisted, stepping aside as a tall figure entered the room. Kevin Durant walked quietly into Zayden's hospital room, carrying a basketball and wearing the same warm smile that had comforted countless young fans over his career. He was dressed casually in jeans and a hoodie, looking more like someone's cool older brother than one of the most famous athletes in the world. Zayden's eyes widened in complete disbelief. For the first time in weeks, she sat up in bed, her mouth falling open as she tried to process what she was seeing. "Hey there, Zayden," Durant said softly, approaching her bed with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to making people feel comfortable. "I heard you're a pretty good basketball player." "You're Kevin Durant," Zayden whispered, as if saying his name might make him disappear. "Yeah, I am. And you're Zayden Mitchell, the toughest player in Phoenix." He pulled up a chair next to her bed, sitting down so they were at eye level. "I saw your story online, and I had to come meet you." For the first time in months, Zayden's face showed genuine emotion. Tears began streaming down her cheeks as she struggled to believe that her basketball hero was actually sitting in her hospital room. "I can't play anymore," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm too sick." Right now, you can't play, Durant corrected gently. But that doesn't mean you're not still a player. Some of the strongest people I know are fighting battles that nobody else can see. He spent the next 3 hours in that hospital room, and what happened there would change Zayden's life forever. Durant didn't talk about basketball statistics or his own achievement. Instead, he asked about her drawings, her fears, her dreams beyond sports. He listened intently. She told him about losing her friend, about feeling like a burden to her mother, about wanting to give up when everything hurt too much. "You know what I think?" Durant said, as their visit was coming to an end. "I think you're stronger than any opponent I've ever faced on a basketball court. Cancer's playing dirty, but you're still in the game. That takes more courage than anything I've ever had to do." Before he left, Durant signed the basketball he had brought and handed it to Zayden. But it wasn't the autograph that mattered. It was what he whispered to her as he placed the ball in her hand. "Promise me you'll fight for one more day. Just one more day. And when that day is over, promise me you'll fight for one more after that." Zayden clutched the basketball against her chest and nodded, tears still streaming down her face. "I promise," she whispered back. The change in Zayden after Kevin Durant's visit was immediately apparent to everyone who knew her. For the first time in months, she asked Tempe to turn on the television, specifically to watch basketball games. She started talking again, not just responding to questions, but initiating conversations about things she was thinking about and feeling. "Mom, did you know that Kevin Durant was really skinny when he was a kid too?" Zayden said one morning while picking at her breakfast. "He said people told him he wasn't strong enough to play professional basketball, but he proved them wrong." Tempe felt tears of relief welling up in her eyes. This was the most animated she had seen her daughter since before the relapse. "What else did he tell you, baby?" "He said that fighting cancer is like playing defense against the toughest opponent ever, but that I'm already winning because I haven't given up. And he said that every day I wake up and decide to keep fighting, I'm scoring points." The basketball Durant had given her never left Zayden's side. She slept with it, held it during chemotherapy sessions, and spent hours spinning it on her finger while lying in bed. Nurse Paisley noticed that Zayden was more cooperative with treatments, more engaged with the medical staff, and more willing to talk about her fears and hopes. "It's remarkable," Dr. Sterling told Tempe during one of their weekly consultations. "Her psychological improvement is as dramatic as any medical intervention we could have provided. Sometimes the right inspiration at the right moment can be more powerful than any medication." But the journey was far from over. Zayden's treatment protocol required increasingly intensive chemotherapy that left her severely weakened for days at a time. The new regimen caused hair loss in places where hair had just started growing back, and the side effects were more brutal than anything she had experienced during her first round of treatment. "I feel like I got hit by a truck," Zayden said after a particularly difficult session, clutching Durant's basketball as nausea waves rolled through her small body. "Remember what KD told you," Tempe said, holding a cool washcloth to her daughter's forehead. "You're playing defense against the toughest opponent ever. This is just cancer trying to score on you, but you're not going to let it win." Zayden began referring to her chemotherapy sessions as training sessions and her recovery periods as halftime. She created elaborate mental scenarios where she was playing one-on-one basketball against cancer, with each treatment representing a defensive stop that prevented cancer from scoring. The framework gave her a sense of control and purpose that transformed how she approached her medical care. "Today, cancer tried to make me too tired to get out of bed," she told Paisley one afternoon, "but I got up anyway and walked to the nurse's station twice. That's like stealing the ball and scoring on a fast break." The viral video that had brought Durant to meet Zayden continued to spread, generating ongoing support from the basketball community and beyond. NBA players began mentioning Zayden in interviews, and the Phoenix Mercury dedicated their next home game to her. But more meaningfully for Zayden, children from around the country who were fighting their own battle with cancer began reaching out through the hospital. "There's a boy in Denver named Marcus who has brain cancer," Tempe told Zayden one day, showing her a letter that had arrived at the hospital. "He says, watching your story gave him hope to keep fighting his own battle." This revelation sparked something new in Zayden. She began asking Paisley to help her record short videos for other sick children, sharing what she had learned about finding strength in the darkest moment. Her room became a hub of activity as she worked on drawings and letters for young cancer patients across the country. If I can help other kids feel less alone, then being sick might actually be worth something, Zayden said one day, while working on a picture for a little girl in Texas who was about to start chemotherapy. 2 months after Durant's visit, Zayden's latest blood work brought the news everyone had been hoping for. Dr. Sterling entered her room with a genuine smile that Tempe hadn't seen since before the relapse. "I have some very good news," he said, sitting down beside Zayden's bed. "Your latest tests show that you're in complete remission. The cancer cells are undetectable in your blood and bone marrow." Zayden looked confused for a moment. "Does that mean I'm cured?" "It means you've won this round," Dr. Sterling explained carefully. "We still need to continue treatment for several more months to make sure the cancer doesn't come back. But your body has responded better and faster than we dared to hope." The celebration in room 717 was quiet but profound. Tempe cried tears of relief, while Zayden held her basketball and smiled, really smiled. For the first time since her diagnosis, Paisley brought other nurses and medical staff who had become invested in Zayden's journey, and everyone took turns hugging the little girl who had fought so hard to stay alive. "I need to call KD and tell him the good news," Zayden said excitedly. "He made me promise to fight for one more day, and I've been fighting for 62 more days since then." Through the hospital's social media, they were able to arrange a video call with Durant, who was on the road with the sun. When his face appeared on the tablet screen, Zayden held up her basketball and grinned. "I kept my promise," she announced proudly, "and the doctors say I'm winning the game against cancer." "I never doubted you for a second," Durant replied, his own smile genuine and warm. "You're the toughest competitor I know. What's your next move?" "I want to go home and play basketball again," Zayden said without hesitation. "And I want to help other kids who are scared like I was." As Zayden's strength returned over the following weeks, she began planning for life beyond the hospital. Her perspective on basketball had evolved. It was no longer just about personal achievement or winning game. She saw it now as a tool for connection, hope, and healing. "I used to think basketball was about being the best player," she told Tempe one evening as they prepared for her discharge from the hospital. "But now, I think it's about showing people that you can keep playing even when the game gets really hard." The little girl who had once been ready to give up had transformed into someone who understood that strength wasn't about never falling down. It was about getting back up every time you did. 6 months after her discharge from Phoenix Children's Hospital, Zayden Mitchell walked into the Roosevelt Elementary Gymnasium for the first time since her collapse during the championship game. She was still bald by choice. "It's my warrior look," she told anyone who asked, and she moved with the careful confidence of someone who had learned to appreciate every moment of feeling strong. The gym fell silent as she entered. Her former teammate, now a year older and seasoned by months of playing without their star player, stopped their warm-up drills to stare. Braylon, who had grown taller and more confident during Zayden's absence, froze mid-dribble when he saw his former best friend. "Zay?" he said uncertainly, as if he couldn't quite believe she was real. "Hey, Braylon," Zayden replied with a smile that held no anger or resentment, despite the months of silence between them. "Still working on that left-handed layup?" The reunion was awkward at first. Her former teammates didn't know how to act around her. She looked different, carried herself differently, and radiated a kind of quiet strength that seemed far beyond her 9 years. But when Zayden picked up a basketball and began dribbling with the same fluid motion that had once made her legendary, something shifted in the room. "Can you still do the crossover?" asked Maya, one of her former teammates, tentatively approaching. Zayden grinned and executed the move that had once been her signature, sending an imaginary defender stumbling as she drove toward the basket. The muscle memory was still there, though her body tired more quickly than it once had. "Some things never change," she said, breathing a little harder than she would have a year ago. Coach Martinez, who had been coaching youth basketball for 15 years, approached Zayden with obvious emotion. "It's good to see you back in here, kiddo. How are you feeling?" "Strong enough to play," Zayden replied confidently. "Not for hours, like I used to, but enough to remember why I love this game." What happened next surprised everyone, including Zayden herself. Instead of immediately trying to rejoin her old team or prove that she could still dominate the court, she found herself drawn to a group of younger kids who were struggling with basic skills during a beginner's clinic. "Here, let me show you," she said to a 7-year-old boy who was getting frustrated with his dribbling. "The secret isn't trying to control the ball. It's learning to work with it, even when it doesn't go where you want it to. As she patiently guided the younger children through fundamental drills, something clicked for Zayden. This felt more meaningful than any championship game she had ever played. Teaching these kids, seeing their faces light up when they finally made a shot or completed a successful pass, gave her the same rush she used to get from scoring game-winning baskets. "You're really good at this," Coach Martinez observed, watching Zayden work with the beginners. "Have you ever thought about coaching?" The idea hadn't occurred to her, but suddenly it seemed obvious. "Actually, I have an idea," Zayden said, her mind racing with possibility. "What if we started a special program for kids who are going through tough times? Not just cancer kids, but any kid who needs to remember that they're stronger than they think?" Within a month, Zay's Warriors was born. Tempe helped her daughter develop a program that combined basketball skill, training with emotional support, and mentorship. They partnered with Phoenix Children's Hospital to identify young patients who might benefit from sports-based therapy, and they reached out to other community organizations serving children facing various challenges. The program's first session took place in the same gymnasium where Zayden had collapsed a year and a half earlier. 12 children attended. Some were cancer patients like herself. Others were dealing with family problems, bullying, or other personal struggles. What they all had in common was a need to remember their own strength. "Everyone here is fighting a battle that other people can't see," Zayden told the group, standing at center court with the basketball Kevin Durant had given her. "Basketball isn't going to cure anyone's problems, but it's going to teach us that we're tougher than we think we are." The session began with basic skill, but Zayden quickly shifted focus to what she called warrior principle, lessons she had learned during her own battle with cancer. When a young boy named Diego got frustrated because he kept missing shots, Zayden stopped the entire group. "Who can tell me what Diego just did?" she asked. "He missed a bunch of shots," said Emma, another participant. "No," Zayden corrected. "Diego just proved that he's not afraid to try, even when it's hard. Every miss means you're brave enough to take the shot. That's what warriors do." Word about Zay's Warriors spread quickly through Phoenix's healthcare and education community. Kevin Durant, who had stayed in touch with Zayden through regular video calls, offered to sponsor the program and occasionally visit sessions when his schedule allowed. Other professional athletes began volunteering their time, drawn by Zayden's unique approach to using sports as a tool for healing. But the most meaningful endorsement came from the children themselves. Parents reported dramatic improvements in their kids' confidence and emotional resilience after participating in the program. Hospital social workers began referring patients specifically to Zay's Warrior, recognizing its therapeutic value. "Zayden has created something special here," Dr. Sterling told Tempe during one of Zayden's regular follow-up appointments. "She's taken her own trauma and transformed it into a source of healing for others." That kind of post-traumatic growth is remarkable in anyone, but especially in someone her age. 6 months after starting the program, Zayden was invited to speak at a national conference on pediatric cancer care. Standing at the podium in front of hundreds of doctors, nurses, and child life specialists, she looked small but unshakable. "A year ago, I wanted to die," she began, her voice clear and strong. "I thought cancer had taken everything that mattered to me, but I learned something important. Cancer can take your hair, your energy, and your normal life, but it can't take your purpose unless you let it." She paused, looking out at the audience of adults who had dedicated their careers to helping sick children. "Every kid who gets cancer becomes a warrior, whether they want to or not. But not every warrior knows their own strength. My job now is to help them see what I couldn't see when I was lying in that hospital bed. That surviving something horrible doesn't make you broken. It makes you powerful." The standing ovation lasted for several minutes, but Zayden was already thinking about the kids she would see at practice the next day. The ones who needed to hear that they were stronger than their circumstances. 3 years after her diagnosis, on the anniversary of her first collapse in the gymnasium, Zayden returned to the same court for a special ceremony. The school was retiring her jersey, not because of her athletic achievement, but because of what she had built from the ashes of her playing career. As she stood at center court, holding up jersey number 23, she looked into the crowd and found Kevin Durant, who had flown in specifically for the ceremony. He nodded at her with the pride of someone who had watched a scared little girl transform into a leader. "This jersey doesn't represent the player I was," Zayden said into the microphone, her voice carrying to every corner of the packed gymnasium. It represents the person I became when I learned that winning isn't about defeating other people, it's about refusing to be defeated by life. She raised the basketball Durant had given her, now scuffed and worn from 3 years of constant use, above her head. "Promised is owed," she called out, using the phrase that had become Zay's Warriors' motto. "One day at a time, but never giving up. Who's with me in this fight?" The roar from the crowd was deafening, but Zayden barely heard it. She was already planning the next Zay's Warriors session, thinking about the new kids who would need to learn that they were stronger than they knew, and remembering the promise she had made to a basketball superstar in a hospital room 3 years ago. She had kept fighting for one more day, and then another and another. And she would keep fighting for as long as there were other warriors who needed to remember their own strength.